I do breakout sessions.
Okay, amazing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Talking Away the Taboo. We're doing this a little bit differently this time. We're not doing an Insta Live, but we're doing this in a Zoom format because, us us people need to switch things up every now and then just to make it fun and interesting. But I am super excited to introduce you to Dr. Cori Baill, who is the author of show the book, show the book, show the book. Why is mommy crying? Explaining early pregnancy loss to young children. So I met Dr. Baill when I was actually sent her book, and I was thrilled to read it, and I am thrilled to introduce her to you. So, Dr. Baill, please, tell us like just a little bit about yourself and sort of the prelude, the intro to how this book was even conceived and and then written. Tell us a little bit about it, and you, please.
I really appreciate being asked a question about how it was conceived because I'm a board certified OBGYN. and,
Look, I had to, every now and then I like to throw in a little bit of a pun here and there. So here we are.
I appreciated that. I the nexus for this book, the kernel for this book was really not out of my professional experience, but out of my personal experience of having experienced a miscarriage when I was already out in practice and part of a community in Gainesville, Florida, and being so surprised that there was not very many resources for me. I called my local synagogue, and I was told that the rabbi would be, very happy to come over and meet with my husband and I and talk with us. But in terms of any, I was curious if there was any, or not curious, I wanted to know, should there be some ritual? Was there some appropriate prayer? Was there any ceremony? No. If you want to, we could give you an aliyah for having survived a dangerous voyage, like traveling on a ship. Religion has really lagged behind the changes in our family size and the smaller family, and the fact that many of us are a little older as we are completing our families, which puts us, of course, a little higher risk for miscarriage. But even when people had 10 or 15 kids, they still had a 1 in 4 or so-ish risk of miscarriage. Because women were raising so many children, perhaps they did not have a lot to do with establishing the rituals around childbirth and child loss, which surprised me. It really surprised me. I think it especially surprised me because, we all know the high holiday prayers about Hannah and the basis of prayer in Judaism being a woman pleading to God to relieve her infertility.
Right.
And so I just have to say, I was dazed by that. And
I was going to say, I'll interrupt you for a second and just say you and I think almost every other Jewish woman. Again, I'm not trying to speak for all of us, but those of us that have gone through this, right?
This was not unique to my synagogue. I understand that completely.
Yeah, this is, it's wild. And it's wild that there doesn't exist anything formal. And I was told, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I was told at some point, someone said something to me, oh, because you were mentioning, in previous generations, how women used to have so many children, so because they were so busy raising all these children and going through all of the hardships that they needed to deal with in previous centuries, it was very common for, kids and people to die right and left. So there wasn't any time to mourn, and there was no time for grieving. And so therefore, these rituals don't exist. And I was like, okay, not very satisfying of an answer, but like, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, but it hasn't been really just like last week that women started having smaller family sizes. I just think religion is very slow to embrace ritual change. But I mean, it's occurred. I mean, we have bat mitzvahs. I mean, there's much more egalitarian practices. But in this area, the silence around miscarriage in general is certainly not unique to Judaism. It's not unique to religion. I mean, there's as an OBGYN, I have certainly seen the secular version of, well, I'm going to, she should just move on, just tell her she's healthy. Family members telling me to tell my patient who's had a miscarriage that, not trivializing it, saying it's not a big deal, and tell her she'll have lots of kids and just get pregnant soon. And there's a societal attitude about this that just astounds me. So I'm not a grief expert. I'm not a child expert. I mean, I'm an OBGYN. So I kept waiting for somebody else to write a book that would help to explain to other children in a family, or the children in your cousins and your nieces and your nephews, or your brothers, your sisters' families, the whole extended mishpucha, that what a miscarriage was. And everyone, every few years in medical practice, I would Google or look, pre-Google, my practice started, I would look for this book in the bookstore, or I would look for this, when Amazon became prevalent, look for this on Amazon, and I never found it. I just never really found it. There are some personal memoir kind of books, and there are some very, books with very heavy iconology, very specific to Christianity out there. But nothing that I thought really explained it to young children from a point of view that they could understand. And I also had 2 children at the time that I miscarried, and my son asked some very pointed questions about what was going on. And I think, like many physicians, you use creative outlets to help process some of the things that happen, that sort of capture that nexus between being a physician and being a human being, and,
Yes.
and the emotional side of things. And my outlet had always been creative writing. I've been not done a whole lot, but I've pleased to have published a short story with Bellevue Literary Review, and I have a couple other short stories floating around. I've done some essays recently for the Journal of Patient Experience. So writing has always been my outlet, rather than, as some people have, music or sewing or other creative outlets. And I wrote a short story fairly close to the time that I had miscarried, which we're talking, almost 30 years ago. And every few years, around it, I'd look at, and for this story, it wasn't out there. I'd pick it out of the drawer. I'd work on it a little bit. And then when my daughter graduated from medical school, I decided I really needed to get on the stick, and really, if I was ever going to do something with this book, I needed to get it done. And I was very fortunate to find a home with the Greenleaf Book Group, and here it is. And it's meant to be very inclusive. From Max's point of view, he has a mom and dad, but the mother never refers to a family as only being a mother and father. She's careful to use a gender neutral language. I decided that to make a book appropriate for children as young as 3, that I would include the concept of God. I mean, because I think that children who have loving parents, that relationship to their parents, they can so easily transfer it to the idea of their relationship, their parents' relationship, their relationship to God. It's very comforting to children. We use all kinds of imaginative constructs to comfort children. I mean, to get them through their baby teeth coming out of their mouth, they have tooth fairies and all kinds of constructs. But I also thought that children they hear all the time, oh, the baby's with God, and it was something I wrestled with about whether I wanted to make it completely non-religious, and I decided that from the child's point of view, that's would offer comfort regardless of the parent's religion, but there's no iconology. This book's appropriate for any, I think any belief system. And
It's one of the things that I love about the book, because I mean, there are many pieces, but the fact that it talks about sort of this higher being, but not in a specific way. So therefore it's applicable to anyone.
I think so. I mean, it's funny, I expected some pushback when I wrote the book. It's a deliberately multiracial family. It's a little ambiguous, but it's a multiracial family. And I thought I'd have a little pushback about that at being a white writer. I thought maybe I'd have a little pushback from the fact that I'm not an expert, though in the back of the book, we do have, we do list some additional resources, because I wanted to make sure that an expert voice was there. But the thing that people got upset about was that I, as a physician, as a scientist, as a physician, shouldn't be talking about God. I mean, and it wasn't that much, but if somebody criticizes the book, that's the criticism. And that really surprised me, because I mean, again, for a child, I think it's very comforting. I think I was careful not to, make it like exclusive or have any icon, there's no angels or heavens or,
Right.
I don't know, it just really surprised me. But anyway, I think I agree with you. I think it is applicable to anyone. And the really wonderful thing is I had an amazing artist. I can't tell you how many hundreds of portfolios I looked through. I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted somebody who had some sense of whimsy, but the emotions of her characters were accessible, and who was talented. And Heather Bell is just an amazing on all counts. And it was a wonderful collaboration to work with her. There's a moon that reflects the mood of the child, that reflects the mood of his little pet that's listening, his stuffed animal, wherever he goes. She just did such a beautiful job.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I was very much, I mean, all children's books, I believe, they need to tell the story with their pictures in addition to the words. And this book really does that so beautifully, so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Heather, who was the artist, had at the time that I first sent her the manuscript, her son at that time, I believe, was about 4. And he was totally fascinated with this concept. And she read him the story before there was even any art to it. Just sort of my suggestions. He's wearing a big T-shirt, but there wasn't any.
Right.
The art wasn't there yet, and he really told his mommy he liked it. He wanted her to do the project, and it was that really touched me. I mean, we tested it with young readers. I mean, I tested it to young readers, but I found that just really heartwarming. So it is written to comfort families, but especially to comfort children. It addresses the child's perspective of, and all too often, as much science as surrounds the mother, young children are just, they don't know what's going on. All of a sudden their mom is sad. They may not have even known that she was pregnant. Right. If it was early enough, and this is sort of meant to comfort everyone and maybe serve as a springboard to talk about some larger issues if they choose to, hopefully, but primarily to comfort and console.
So when do you think is the right time to introduce a book like this? Is this like, is it meant for the immediate event? Is it meant for, maybe we didn't discuss it at the time, or we discussed it and then moved on, and a year later or 6 months later, someone picks this up? Like, when, or even after that, when do you think is the right time, or is there a wrong time, maybe, is the better question, to have someone take a look at this book?
And well, I have no answer for that, or I have a lot of answers for that, because I think families are unique, and there's I mean, I can see this book being a gift to someone who's experienced a miscarriage, just as a way, because people are at such a loss as what to say to someone who's gone through this. This says, I care about you, because it is a book of consolation. And so, sure, it can be appropriate at the time of the event, but I also think that years and years later, it can be appropriate. Some of the reviewers who have reviewed my book as adults write about the pain of knowing their mother went through a miscarriage and having no idea what was going on for years and years, and finding comfort in this book and wanting to use this book to explain to their children what happened to them when they were a child.
Wow.
So it's like multi-generational. Some of the stories I've heard have really been, made me so glad that I persisted with this project, and that it's out there to help people.
Can you share one or two of them that really touched you
Well,
specifically?
the reviewer who told me that he so appreciated this book because of his childhood experiences, one that really stands out. Another one that stands out is, I have a good friend. I mean, a really good friend who I've known for 15 years, through a bout of breast cancer, through, our kids having some challenges. And we've known each other a long time and through a lot of stuff, right? And when I wrote this book, and she's a poet. And when I brought the book to Lynn Sedgwick, I guess I mentioned her name. When I brought the book to Lynn, she said, well, Cori, did I ever tell you? I had never known that she had had a stillbirth at 20 weeks.
Oh gosh.
I mean, we met further on in our lives than that, but you would have thought, of all the things that we went through together, that she would have at some point told me, and knowing that I was working on the book.
Right.
But it really wasn't until she had the book in her hands that she, had read through it, that she felt that she could tell me. And I said, Lynn, why would you never have told me this before? And she said, well, I was told to just get on with it, to get pregnant as soon as possible and have a baby, and just put this behind me.
Right. Right. Wow. I have chills.
I did too. It just, and so that thing of people entrusting me with their stories, not just people I don't know, but people that I know well, who then get this book and open up about their experiences. There's such an unmet need, and I hope other people will also, write other books that will help. I think books are such a wonderful resource for everything. I mean, there's it's so nice. And if this book helps end some of the silence around miscarriage, then I think it was well worth having done. But the real purpose of it is to comfort, and and console, and I hope it does that.
Incredible. I'm curious, in your personal life, did when and how did you tell your children about your loss?
Oh, that's interesting, because they were both, they were 20 and 30 when the book was published. Um, huh. I think we were never reticent about it. We talked about it. My son especially, always wanted brothers, and he ended up with a sister. And then after our miscarriage, though we were very open to having another pregnancy, it just never happened. Um, and and we talked about, well, we we had another pregnancy that didn't, that we returned to be with God, that didn't come to be, only started on its way, didn't stay with us. So some of the language that's used in the book did grow out of those conversations with my son. At the actual time that I miscarried was one of the only times that my son didn't sleep through the night, once he started sleeping through the night, which he didn't start doing until he was 18 months of age.
Wow. Right. Right.
Right. So the one that my daughter who graduated from medical school, I thought she was retarded because she slept through the night at 7 weeks.
Yeah, right. It's
Turns
all
out
about,
she's actually, really.
I was going to say it's all about your point of reference, right?
Right. But the first one, it was 18 months. Anyway, but when the night that I miscarried, he got up and found me. And that was the only time, other than maybe when he was really sick, that he ever really got up during the night to find me as an infant. So part of that conversation probably started that night. I mean, that encouraged me to write the book. It's never been hidden in our family. It's always been open. So I think the kids, exactly at what point it registered with them, really, I'm not sure, but it's just always been, information that was there for them that they
Amazing. Amazing. So who is, I mean, I know you've talked about, whether it's at the time of the event or whether it's years later or whether it's, a gift for someone else. We've talked about different sort of times or different sort of audiences that might be appropriate for this book. I guess the question is, what is the right way that you would suggest someone gift this book if you're giving it to someone else?
Do you think there's just one right way?
No, but a conversation. What are the words? Like, in my line of work, I always say, my line of work, there's never a right answer and a wrong answer. There's always a conversation, right? So I think that like when I think about this kind of book and giving someone this kind of book, it's not like, here, I got this for you, right? Like,
right. Happy birthday. No.
Right, exactly. Maybe it's something like, I saw this, it really touched me. This might give you the words where there are none, something to that effect. Like, I personally am not in the business of sort of giving people things unless they ask for it. So that's why I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, because I find often people reach out to me personally and they say, when they know someone who's been through a loss, they say, can you talk to her? Can you talk to them? And I say, no, I'm not going to just like call them up on the phone or knock on their doorbell and like stand on their doorstep and say, I'm here. I personally wait for them to reach out. But when you're in that space and time, it's very hard to reach out because you're so steeped in this grief. So I guess I'm asking for myself also, like, what's the best way to go about giving someone something like this?
I think it depends a little bit on the relationship too. If it was a friend far away, I mean, I could see calling them and then saying, I'm going to send you something that might help you talk to Jimmy or little Susie or Shira or Chaim or whoever.
Yeah.
But certainly if I was in the community and I could, as we often do, you make a little something, you bring it over, you offer to, run the vacuum, do a load of laundry. And I have a picture book that when the time's right and you want to talk about it with your kids, and you might like it too. It's very comforting.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So that would be my idea. I have a friend, you were talking about stories. I have another friend who's an adult book author. And she has a relative that has forbidden her to talk about her miscarriage.
Right.
And, we're never going to discuss this. I don't ever want to hear you talk to me about this. And I just think that's so sad that she's chosen to silo herself off from that kind of comfort.
Right.
So I'm like, well, maybe next time you visit, you could just kind of leave it in a stack of books somewhere.
Exactly. Right. Just like leave it on the
know?
side next to the front door. Right. Right.
Or the pile of something in the corner, just forget it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I put it away 2 months later. I left that bag, at your house when I was there. Yeah, yeah. You might want to look in it.
So I don't, I mean, because I remember we were joking about how she might be able to get this to that relative. But anyway, so I'm not sure I always have the right words or the right answer, but I think it's, so many people say inappropriate things that professionally, when I've had patients who have had miscarriages, I've often said to patients as part of the discussion afterwards, it will really help you to develop a little selective deafness. And when people say things that are entirely inappropriate, like you'll have plenty of, you're young, you're healthy, you're plenty, don't worry about, just hear them say they're concerned and they want to help. And give them something to do. Like run the vacuum or load of laundry or something.
I was going to say, I feel like I need to, I'm like jotting this down now, the selective deafness. I love that. I love that. It's such a great way of just encapsulating.
Otherwise, the stuff that people are going to say to you is just going to eat you alive, because some of it is just, I mean, what people think is a comforting statement. Yep. If they gave it 2 minutes of thought, they might realize, but they want to say something to comfort you, and just hear that they're comforting you and not that they're
yes
amazingly
hear the sentiment behind the noise. The noise is there, but forget about the noise.
Hear the intent.
Yeah.
So
okay, amazing. Okay, can you please, Dr. Baill, can you please tell people where can they get the book? Where can they get this? Okay.
Well, I think it's available to order wherever children books are sold. And of course, we always like to encourage independent bookstore patronage, and they should be able to order it because it's in the system. But it's also, of course, available through Amazon.com. And look for it as "Why is Mommy Crying?" explaining, and it'll come right up.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this incredibly important book that everyone should know about, but also just for your words of comfort also, and sharing your experience, because look, I mean, this is what not only brings these messages alive, but also brings these books alive and shares with people what the meaning behind it is, and the reasons for why this book needed to exist. And so I think it's incredibly important. Thank you so much for all of this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Are we done recording?
Hold on.